Hello guys, welcome back. This is a very interesting game. It's played between the two Vasylys, that is, Vassily Smyslov and Vasyl Ivanchuk. This was played in the 55th USSR Championship in 1988. For context, Vassily Smyslov had been world champion before, I believe in 1951, and even though this is 1988, he's nearly 67 years old. Meanwhile, Vasyl Ivanchuk, he had already become one of the strongest in the world at 19, and only about 2 years, 3 years later, he'll become number two in the world. So he's a very strong player at this point. So most people would assume that the much older guy, the Vasily Smyslov, the 67-year-old, would not stand a chance against the 19-year-old Ivanchuk. But let's see this game to see what happens. Smyslov starts off with d4. Close that. Knight. We have knight f6, c4, e6. Knight f3, c5, and we enter this Indian game. Sort of like a Benoni, but not really. So we have some exchanges. Now this is a kind of Queen's Gambit decline, only white doesn't have an e pawn and black doesn't have a c pawn. So bishop e7, captures, bishop d3. Knight c6, castles, rook e1. Okay, so both sides are developing very nicely. Ivanchuk plays bishop f6, so you move on to put a little bit more pressure on a d4 pawn. It's an isolated pawn, so it makes sense. You have bishop e4, knight to c to e7, and now knight to e5. And now Ivanchuk does something very interesting. In the game, he plays knight c6, and the idea is he's actually just offering a draw. So let's say white goes back to knight f3, then you go back here, and then you go back here, and then go back here in threefold repetition. So that's what he was aiming for with knight c6, but instead of the repeating knight f3, knight e7, white plays queen to d3. So now we're putting a lot of pressure against this h7 pawn. We have h6, bishop captures, and now knight b4, a nice in-between move. So the idea is that black is going to take back maybe with the knight, using this tempo. And let's say white just goes back to queen d1, then maybe simply this. And black can start exchanging pieces off, and black will be completely fine. In the game, however, Smyslov did not play queen d1, but played queen g3, the much more aggressive alternative. Now we have some threats. And Ivanchuk replies with bishop h4. Now you may be thinking, okay, but why not knight c2, right? Well, the issue with knight c2 is that it actually just loses. You have bishop e4, and let's say you go for knight takes a1. Then bishop takes h6, queen to e7, and now rook takes a1. And after all this, Smyslov is up material, and his position is just better. Black's king side safety is a little bit impaired, and top of that, black's pieces are going to have a little bit of trouble developing. This bishop doesn't really have a good square. This rook is going to be stuck on a1 for a while. Now, instead of knight takes a1, there was a second option, bishop h4, the move Ivanchuk played in game. Why can't he play it now? Well, first we have bishop h7 and king h8. If you simply take this bishop, then queen d3, and then you win this knight. So king h8, and now bishop takes c2. And this can get very complicated. Bishop takes g3, h takes, queen takes, bishop f4, queen b4, rook c1, queen takes b2, bishop b3. And, in this variation, black is the one up material, but white, the computer still considers white having the advantage. Despite this weird material imbalance, white's minor pieces are very active on e5 and b5. This bishop, pretty nice. This bishop is also crisscrossing. The rooks are nicely placed along the c file and the e file, and it's hard to suggest how black can continue developing their pieces. Again, this rook and bishop on c8. Okay, so we had bishop h4, and Smyslov just moves his queen out of the way. We have now pawn takes d5, and now rook e2. Rook e2 to prevent that knight c2 idea. Bishop e6, a3, taking the knight back. And Ivanchuk doesn't have that many good scores for the knight. He plays knight to c6. And this essentially invites Smyslov to create a very nice hanging pawn structure with his backward c pawn. The alternative knight a6 is not good either, so he had to pick his poison here. So, okay, knight a4, right? The idea is very simple. Get to c5, and your knight's just crushing. Nicely placed here, starts cramping the queen side a lot. Queen c8, h3. Create a little bit of luft for the king. We have bishop e7, but now bishop f4, taking over the dark square diagonals here. So we have queen to a6, and now knight c5. Ivanchuk exchanges, and now queen b5, placing pressure on the c5 pawn. Oh, we have rook on a to e1, doubling up rooks. King h7, and now queen to g3. So maybe there's some bishop e5 ideas in the air. So, okay, bishop f5, and now bishop d6, attacking the rook on f8. Ivanchuk moves, and now rook e7. So, in this position, Smyslov has the upper hand. Again, it's very hard to see how black gets any play, especially with this very aggressive rook on e7. Ivanchuk is forced on the defensive here. Then he plays bishop g6, guarding the f7 pawn. Now queen to c3, look at that, just guarding the b2 pawn, as well as exerting some pressure on g7. We have queen to a4, and now bishop to e5, continuing that pressure along this very nice a1 to h8 diagonal. Rook on a to e8, and now bishop d4. The idea being if he just takes it, we can replace it with the other rook, and white still has this very nice pressure. So okay, we have bishop d4, and now rook to b8, rook to e3, and now a5, restricting any b4 advances, getting rid of an a7 weakness. f4, and now queen d1, rook to e1, and then queen back to a4. Queen d2, and now rook b3. So okay, Ivanchuk is getting some nice plays. At least has one of his rooks pretty active along this third rank, but is it enough? So let's see. Is it enough for Ivanchuk to maybe turn the tide, to maybe get some winning chances? We have bishop c3, so put pressure along against this a5 pawn, but also simply block the rook. This rook no longer has that nice influence along the third rank. So now we have queen c4, and now queen f2. Bishop e4, okay, so Ivanchuk is disconnecting these rooks, and on top of that, he's putting pressure on the g2 pawn, so maybe there's some play for him. But now, simply rook takes f7. And this is actually the beginning of a very nice exchange sacrifice. So, first d4. We're going to gain a tempo against this bishop, and we're going to attack this rook. But Smyslov says, I don't need the rook on f7, because the bishop on e4 is much more valuable. Now, black's side scores are just very weak. So we have king h8, and now f5, taking more space, preventing any g5 ideas. We have queen d5, and now simply queen takes d5. Pawn takes, and now rook to e6. The threat being rook takes h6. Ivanchuk says the d4 pawn is more important. Maybe we can get this advance in, but Smyslov first takes on h6, and then puts the rook back, preventing the d4 advance. So, okay, Smyslov is down the exchange, but he has a lot of pawns for the exchange, and it's, again, very unclear how these rooks are going to get into the game, especially with this bishop-rook combination protecting everything. And we can kind of see the harmony in White's pieces. This bishop here is putting tremendous pressure against this g7 pawn, as well as guarding the nice dark squares in the center. This rook is assisting the bishop in preventing this pawn advance. And comparably, this rook, yes, this rook's backing a pawn, and this rook's here, but this rook's on b3 is not doing anything. The rook on d8's sort of passive. So, okay, rook to c8, attacking the pawn, rook g4. Rook takes g7 check. King here, and now f6. Oh, someone's calling me. Hello? Hmm? Yeah, okay. 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 Bye. Apologies for that. Phone calls. All right, so we'll quickly finish up this game. So, okay, f6. White has this passed pawn and this rook on g7, so black is pretty lost. So black does a reverse exchange sacrifice. He gives back some material, and now he has this passed d pawn going for him. But will it be enough? So let's see. Rook d7. First things first, if you got passed pawn, if your pawn's got passed pawn, put your rook behind it. It never hurts. We have rook takes, and now rook takes d5. King s7, and the final move of the game, Smyslov plays rook d6, and black resigns. Why did black resign? Well, it's very simple. Yes, you have this a pawn, but once Smyslov puts the rook on a6, you can't really do anything with that pawn. There's no way to promote it. Meanwhile, white's got 3 passed pawns, and 3 passed pawns is a lot. So let's say you go here. Let's say you go check. Sorry, it should be. Unless you try to advance, well, then simply rook here. Let's say you keep advancing. Well, maybe we can just start pushing this h pawn. We don't even need to do anything. And black is kind of in Zug's wing. I mean, yeah, move your king back, but now h6. And you can't really stop any of these. Rook a7, and black's just completely lost. So this is a very excellent game, and I hope you enjoy this video. Thanks and bye.